Hello, welcome to Friday. This is the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Again, thank you so much for all the great emails and messages on social media in support of Tim Dennis. He is still in the hospital. The overall, diagnosis for him is that he was dealing with just a walloping stomach flu. But while they've been working on him, they've located a few other issues that they're going to look into, and he is still in the hospital as of Friday afternoon. So just keep your fingers crossed, prayers on the way to him, send energy, white light, good intentions, whatever you'd like, just to keep him positive and motivated. You can check in on him on social media. He is reading the messages you guys are sending. He may not answer them all, but he is definitely reading them. So thank you again for all the love and support that you guys are sending his way. Because of that, it will be a theater of the mind less Friday show, because without his skills and ability behind the editing panel, we are not able to supply you guys with the stories you're used to hearing. We will get back to that, hopefully, by next Friday. And for those of you that are still kind of in the dark of what's going on, we have cut back the shows to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday going forward until the fall. We are currently working on a few other side projects that are taking a considerable amount of time and effort. We will be back in the fall with 5 days a week and making that available for you. So this just gives you guys a chance to catch up on all the great shows. So all the episodes that you've missed in the past because you've got months worth that you've downloaded. I know it can be hard to get through a full week's worth of shows in a timely manner. This will give you guys a little bit of time to catch up with us and get caught up. But we are giving you 4 shows a week. Technically, you get the 3 shows here, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And, of course, you can continue to subscribe to True Crime Tuesday and listen to the best in true crime talk radio. And if you guys missed this past Tuesday's show, wow, it's a doozy. You got to go check it out. The Weepy-Voiced Killer. We went right here in our own backyard in Minneapolis to find out about this case. And believe it or not, I even got an email after the airing of the show from the Weepy-Voiced Killer's nephew. And we'll share that next Tuesday on the air, getting us some more answers regarding this case. So that's what's going on. Today, we had a good friend of our show, Brad Lockwood, had reached out to me and said, Dave, I've got a guy you need to talk to. I know you guys are always fascinated by history, cultures, the belief systems of others in regards to life, history, and the supernatural. And he introduced me to Dave Shonogo, the director of the Seneca-Iroquois National Museum. He does educational tours and programs all the time, and he is here with us today to speak with us about his culture and some of these great insights, as many of you have been begging for more information from the Native American culture regarding the different aspects of the paranormal, supernatural, and the world around us that many of us may not even know exists. David, thank you so much for joining us today, sir.
Thank you for having me here. I'll, introduce you in our traditional language. Nyawis Seneca-Iroquois this way, and again, we need to David need get also get on cut. Hawaiian D need get also on what on cut. Here technology. So I said in our language, I welcome you all here today, and my English name is David George Shonogo. My Indian name is Hawaiian D. It means they know him. The Ha part, in our language, we have more of a spatial recognition than it is in English. So the Ha sort of means like I'm within sight. I'm like just a little ways from the person. And the Y&D part is that they know him, they're familiar with him. And then I said that my clan is Beaver, and that I'm from Allegheny territory is where I reside. So. just a little bit of our language.
That is fascinating. Thank you very much for sharing that. Now, there's some exciting news. The Seneca Museum is going to be opening up in August. Is that correct?
Correct. The current museum opened August 1st, 1977, and we were supposed to be there for 5 years. 40 years later, it's coming into reality. We have a new cultural center coming about. It's 3 times bigger than what we have now. It'll have classrooms. It'll have a fab lab with 3D printers, Indian market in the back, and a 400-seat amphitheater, an exercise longhouse to start the village that'll be based on the 16th century. And then with the cultural center, I don't like to do things without it being within cultural norms and within our language. So I thought about it for a long time on how to call our cultural center within our own language. And what I came up with was we call ourselves a Nondawaka, people of the Great Hill. I would put ka at the end, meaning that type, that method. Nicole means like here at this spot in this dimension. And then I used Hendwawa Janta, gay. And then the gay part means here too. It's a spatial recognition. But the Hendwawa Janta is what we use like when we do the Gronyo, the Thanksgiving address. And what that sort of means is like you're taking a fishing string and a fishing hook and we throw it from this realm into the spiritual realm and pulling into this realm what it means to be a Nondawaka. So I thought that was a good way to translate the cultural center. We're taking from the spiritual world and bringing it into this physical world and showing people what it means to be us.
All right. Now, with the Seneca and the Iroquois, are those 2 different nations that have come together, or are they one and the same people?
It's like United States versus New York. Us Seneca are one part of the Iroquois Confederacy. We take the 6 of us all together, the Mohawk, the Oneidas, the Onondagas, Cayugas, us, and the Tuscaroras. You put us all together, then we become the Haudenosaunee Iroquois Confederacy. So it would be like somebody saying they're from New York or I'm from the United States. The United States being like the Confederacy, where New York being like Seneca Nation.
Excellent. Okay, so it's just broken down by the tribal areas.
Right, but
okay.
Each nation is its own independent, but then when we come all together, then that's when, like, we have Grand Council in Onondaga over by Syracuse, New York. So,
how many nations total were there in the United States?
Oh, they said there were probably more than 500, and now there's, there were thousands that were before, and now there's only like 500. And so a lot of people, like for around my area, there used to be the Weno and the Neutrals and the Erie, but through wars, through diseases, they sort of just got incorporated into our nation. And so, for example, like we have Conjocketies that are Seneca, but at one time they were neutrals because Conjockety in the neutral language meant beyond the multitude.
And what defined these different nations? Was it just the areas that they were located in?
Yeah, and then everyone had like a little different dialects and little different ways of doing things that, might be different from other people. And so, like, one of the ways that we distinguished ourselves at one point is by our moccasins. So have you ever heard, you don't know anybody until you walked a mile in their moccasins?
Right.
Well, when we adopted people, we would take and have them take off their moccasins and put on our moccasins. And so that was one way of showing that you were from a different nation, different Indian people.
Were the belief systems across the board relatively same? Were they predicated on similar ideals? Or do you find that from New York to California, the ideals and beliefs are completely different from one tribe and one nation to another?
Yeah, I mean, we have some things in common, but some things are just totally different altogether. I mean, the Navajos believe that they come from under the earth, and we believe we came from the sky world. Before there was anything here, there was this sort of water and monsters and some animals, and Sky Woman fell from the sky world. Which is interesting. If anybody ever reads John Armstrong's 1896 version of the creation story, when they pulled up the sky tree and the hole was made, I always thought it was just like a dark hole and that she fell into some kind of chasm. But in that story, in that version, once the tree was pulled up, a white light with a green light in the middle materialized, and then they put her in through the hole. And so then my sci-fi guy part of me gets into thinking about it. You know, did she go like through a wormhole and then came into this version or this dimension? Especially because of our language, like I said, like the way that we talk about things, and the way we think about things. Like the spiritual world is the same amount of space as it is over here in this physical world, and that they're sort of like in different dimensions. So right from the very beginning, it just seems like there was always this understanding that there was different dimensions between these two worlds. Because even when we pass on and we talk about it in our language, we say, for this world we say yons a day, but for that world we call it towns a day. So like that T sound means like I'm here, and what I'm talking about was way out of sight. And for us, when we die, anybody ever watched Ghost Whisperer? Right. That series of it's a lot of like what we believe in. Like we talk to the person because the person may not realize that they had passed on, especially if it was a trauma. We burn like tobacco. It's our belief that when the Creator made people, He made people to walk on the earth. And so when you pass on, they talk about stepping off the earth, and that the ghosts, they float above the world. And so since they don't touch the world like the Creator wanted us to, then they must have to go on to another place.
All right, well, talk to me about cleansing with spirits. You mentioned burning of tobacco and the smoke. What do they believe about that clears the energy of a discorporate soul?
So basically just sort of like to change the tones. We'll burn different things depending on what it is. Like if somebody's having like bad dreams, we have like nightmare root, and you might burn that and put the ash on your face and stuff like that, and that'll help you have better dreams.
So is it basically disrupting energy forms and patterns and creating new ones?
Yes, that's basically what we believe in, and the way that we talk about it, like in our funeral speeches, and that for 10 days we re-walk and relive your life again and meet everybody over again. Because of this belief, we never say goodbye to people. We always say see you later, because whether we see them in this world or in the next world, we're always going to receive people again. So we'll say like a skongia, which means I'll see you again. And so we have 10 days in which we mourn for that person. And during those 10 days, we hatch things in their life, and they can go where they want to go, and we see things. And when you look up at the sky and you see the Milky Way, that's the path that people take in order to go to the sky world. So,
all right. When death occurs, and
yes.
So many cultures look at death in different ways. Of course, there's the sadness of losing someone you care about or know, but is it met with a kind of reverence and that they've achieved a level and that this is a good thing? How exactly do you relate that?
Well, yeah. Well, in our speeches, we say, it's everything on the person's mind, and that. But also we say, that it's their big day that they're going on. That the reason that we have clan system is that in the beginning, people didn't realize that they were going to die. And an older man dies, and they try to prop him up, and he just falls right back down, and they didn't really know what to do, so they just kept about their life. And then a young girl dies, and it troubled them a little bit more. And then somebody in the community that was a good leader died. And after that, they realized that we weren't going to be here forever, and that they needed a way of order to deal with death, because it was such a tragedy that we made up our clan system. And everyone that's in your clan is your family. And so at the time, what they did was make a big bonfire. And the leader at the time, he told the women on the left side to look at the various wild animals, and what they saw is what they became. And then on the right side, he told the women on that side of the fire, whatever they saw is what they became as for the birds. So like my mother was a beaver, my grandmother was a beaver, so I'm a beaver. My wife is a great blue heron. And so for us, it's a good marriage because I'm on the animal side, she's on the bird side. But when somebody dies, it's up to the other side to take care of the funeral and to give the speeches and to say things to make sure that the person moves on. Because some people do get stuck and they stay here and they can cause havoc. And if that happens, then we have other speeches that we talk to them. And a lot of times we burn tobacco or sage, depending on what it is. Well,
in the Christian faith, Dave, many people believe they don't move on because of fear of judgment and facing, the sins of your life here on earth. Is that similar to the way that your people look at death as well? Is that why some of them will refuse to move on for fear of judgment and retribution?
No, it doesn't ever seem like they ever talk about that part. Some people might have, maybe the person didn't want to let them go because the living person's still clinging on to them, and so they're still hanging on, or maybe they didn't want to leave that loved one behind because they were so sad or something. And so we have to talk to them and let them realize that wherever they're going is better than what it is here, basically. And so for us, if they were to stay behind and too much or whatever, they could cause chaos within our realm and affect our reality in a negative way. And so we always try to remind them that they're real powerful at the time when they pass on, and that they need to find their loved ones, because it's believed that the loved ones will be there when they pass on, and will show them sort of like the way in order to go on into the sky world. So,
all right, and now we've spoken to a few other experts on Native American customs in the past, but the one question that I'm very intrigued with in hearing the different aspects, you just said some interesting things regarding the fact that you really don't want your people, the souls, to remain, because you feel that can just cause anarchy and chaos eventually. What about when we hear these stories of Native American burial grounds that have been upset, and it seems to upset something spiritual and negative that reacts? Is this nothing more than Hollywood bastardizing your stories, or are there sentinels? Are they really the spirits of of the people coming back dealing with this? What can you explain to us from your perspective?
Well, for us in our language, right, there's a twice hat. There's the soul, the spirit of the person, and there's three aspects of that. And one aspect is it comes from the sky world. So if you feel on top of your head and there's that soft spot on top of your head, well, that's where that spirit comes into your body. And when it leaves, it goes out that way. And that's one strand that makes up your spirit. Another strand of it is the physical world that we live in, materials. And then the next part of your spirit is the spirit of this planet. And so when those three threads are intertwined together, they light up and make a fire. And that's why people are warm and we have this fire in us. And when death comes, he has like a big cane and puts out your fire. But part of you go into the spiritual world, but part of you remains here on this planet. And because we're part of this planet.
So that's what you're upsetting. It's that fragment of what your soul once was that still remains, that is the part that's angered. It's not like they've come back from heaven or the next level or wherever they go. The sky, they have not come back to do this. It's basically that animal instinct that was left behind of what was once your personalities.
Yeah, it's all that aspect that, and then we have certain ceremonies that we deal with that aspect of your spirit too. And so,
are there certain triggers, like if somebody comes to you or is seeking help, Dave, how do we know the difference between it being Native American in origin as opposed to the white man or an elemental, some force of nature that would be there? Does that make sense? Because some people are so worried they've disturbed a Native American burial ground, and that may be what's causing that. Is there telltale signs that it would be part of your people's culture if it truly was?
People sort of know. We have like people that are seers that can sort of see people. Like I said, like sort of like ghost whisper. So they sort of know, what kind of energy that is that they're disturbing. And so I remember one time a professor asked me, well, how come everyone can't see, like little people or Bigfoot or the ghosts, right? And I was like, well, some people are colorblind, but it doesn't make it that there's no color in the world. That's just maybe they have different eyes or something. I said, I don't know exactly why, but some people have that gift to see things that other people can't see. And so usually we have people that usually deal with that aspect of our society.
And what kind of rituals do you know, or are you able to share with us that you have to go through in order to appease those spirits again? If you've disrupted them and upset them, can you move them on, or do you just have to bag off of that location and let them reside there?
So basically what we try to do is we try to burn tobacco or sage or some kind of thing, and then we always talk in our language. Because to us, talking our language is a higher vibration, I guess is what you might want to call it, and has more meaning than in talking in English. And so there's certain speeches that they did. There's certain speeches that we do now in order to help that person. But sometimes that spirit doesn't want to go and refuses. And you ever heard of some of our stories about the flying heads? There were these monsters that would estimate the world. And one story that I read was that when people were doing cannibalism and killing people and eating people, that those spirits were so traumatized by the being eaten by another person that they sort of grouped all together and made this flying head and started having chaos out of the world. So then there was rituals that we had to do then in order to songs that we had to sing in order to appease them, to get them to go on. So it doesn't always work. I mean, nothing in life is 100%, but you just do the best you can with what you know and try to help them move on as best we can.
Now, you mentioned, too, that when you die, you get a chance to revisit. You get 10 days to kind of revisit points in your life. Are you going there, from your understanding, are you going there to re-witness them, to watch them almost like a movie play out? As we hear, in our culture, when you die, you get a life review. Or are you technically going back to literally relive those moments in time?
So the way I understand it is basically like you go back and it's more like a movie. You sort of re-see your life and you see how you have impacted people in your life. And, you might not have thought that you had done something bad to somebody, and then you go back and you look at it and you're like, oh, well, I negatively, impacted that person and didn't realize. Or
I wonder if in things like deja vu, if those are really moments where our spirit after death is coming back to revisit those specific moments in time. And sometimes it may seem very inconsequential and little in moment, but it may be something that had a deeper impact through our karmic life that we never knew about. Do your people have a belief system in things like deja vu and an explanation for that?
Yeah, I mean, for us, like the past, the future, all those things are intertwined together, and so you may dream things. If you have deja vu, then it's thought that your spirit was already there at one point, and you're just on the. It might be to show you're on the right path to do whatever you need to do. So, and that's some of the way that we will look at deja vu. It's like, oh, okay, this was what was meant to happen. So, keep doing what you need to do in order to keep going on with whatever you're pursuing. And
so it's just right. It's that same kind of thought process then. So we're not that far removed. Now, do you believe that some of the belief systems that have been imparted onto you have come from the white man's culture as well? Or do you believe that they've adopted part of your culture and belief systems? Is that how there are some of these similarities that take place? Or do you believe that they're just universal laws and that's why they make sense the way they do to every culture across the nation?
I think there's universal laws in order to get people to see, certain things. From like our creation story, there was our creator, there was twins, and so for us, we don't really believe traditionally like in bad and good. It's mostly like the yin and yang, the positive and negative, and the creator was more of the positive. Not that he was the great mystery of everything, because he had his grandmother who was older than him, and there were other entity spirits that were older than him, but for this realm, he's the creator of this realm. So we pay him respect that he needs to be paid in order to for what he has accomplished. There were other entities, other spirits. Like for us, there was the thunder beings. That's what makes the thunder, and underneath the world there's monsters. And so when it thunders and lightnings, we believe that some monster might have been trying to come up from under the world, and that they would slow down the lightning to remind them to stay underneath the world and not come up and harm people. Because at one point in our history, they were known to have come up and harmed people. So Hino is the loudest one of them, and the most fierce one out of them. So I guess it would be sort of like Nordic tradition with Thor.
Okay.
Hino is like Thor, and that some of the people that have talked about Hino, though, they always make him like into this like huge figure, like he's a giant, 20 feet tall. tall and stuff, but from what I understood from my elders, he not only supposed to be about 3 feet tall. He's just a little person.
Okay. But he carries a big stick. He makes a lot of noise and has power.
Yeah, if some man tried to fight with him, he could easily take that person over or whatever. He's very strong. Just because he's 3 feet tall doesn't mean he's not very, he doesn't have a lot of power.
Well, and I want to talk about some of these different beings and creatures, but before we do that, I want to roll up some of the other aspects of death. You have an interesting burial custom. After 10 years, what exactly goes on?
So before we used to, in our language, like when we talk about men, sometimes we'll talk about them and we'll say hodi, jiskan, and geto, which means they carry the ancestors. And so at one point we used to have a ceremony in which we unburied the dead and we cleaned their bones and we put them into a mound together. We don't do that practice anymore. When the Europeans first came over, there were a lot of mounds that had our ancestors in them, and they said because of progress, they knocked those all down and put farms there, put the road there, or whatever that they wanted to put there anyway. So a lot of our mounds aren't around anymore. There's still a few in New York that are still ours, but
what was the idea behind digging them up and reburying them after 10 years, though? I know there are different cultures around the world that do that, and in some cases they do it on a yearly basis. They bring them out to like a family meal, reclothe them, and then rebury them. But what was the thought process behind that?
The thought process is to keep them strong and to keep them healthy. We had a story about some brothers that were in a group, and they go to the end of the world, and the sky dome sort of opens up, and it's sort of like Indiana Jones, like you go into the cave and then it collapses in on you. Well, the first two, they got through, and then the third person tried, and it collapsed in on him, and the rest of the guys got up scared about it, so they took off. And so then those two men went up on this hill, and on top of the hill was an older guy, and he said, well, do you want to feel healthy again and never get sick? And they said, yeah. And they lay on this stone slab, and he takes off their skins and bones and cleans them and puts them all back together again. They said that when they came back to the people, that they were always a little different. They could run really fast. They never got sick. But that started that whole tradition of cleaning people's bones after 10 years. Now, we do have, in the past, too, we had a 10-day or 1-year feast, too, when the person had died. But with Guy Wheel, the new version of our longhouse beliefs, it was told to us that was warning too long and that it interfered with the people moving on, and so it went from 1 year to 10 days. Some people still have the year feast, but it's encouraged to try to do everything within the 10 days so that they can move on from this dimension.
And in your culture, are there things, I know we talked about the fact that if spirits stay too long, they can start causing chaos and malevolence. Do they literally become dark or evil in that case, or is it just that they're confused and distraught that causes all of the anarchy?
Well, some of it's just because some of them are confused. Some of them were evil before they passed over and still remained evil. Some people, as I understand it, they might get sort of caught up in, let's say they were in a war, like the War II, and that's when they died. Well, even though it's 2018 now, in their mind, they're still reliving that war of that time period. So it just keeps reliving over and over again, sort of like, Groundhog Day?
Okay.
Barry just kept reliving the same day over and over again.
Right.
And the rest of the world sort of went on, right? So for us, that's where some people get confused. They don't know that they've passed on, and they just believe that it's a certain thing. And so maybe it's 100 years later, and somebody goes into their house and they think it's their house still, even though it's 100 years later. But to them, it looks like the same house as when they had passed on. And so, somebody comes into your house, right? What do? You try to get them out of the house, right? Because they're trespassing. So I don't know if there would be evil in that way, but that's what some of the way that they would be thinking anyways. And so then that's when, like I said, when we burn tobacco and say some stuff to them to let them know, like, hey, your time's over and you need to move on. And the hope is that the other spirits will come, like their family members will come then and show them the way to go on to what's after this.
Have you personally seen what you believe to be a spirit of Native Americans?
Like ghosts? I mean,
right, like a visage like you and I, or do they do like the romanticized versions we've seen in movies? Do they appear as ethereal wolves and owls and tigers and lions and bears? I mean, what exactly is the protocol?
Yeah. What I saw, I know one time, because like when we do the 10-day feast, we'll feed people, and it wasn't like I really saw something. I just sort of felt it, like the hairs on your neck just stand up.
So it was more of a sense than it was a physical sensation of seeing something.
Yeah.
All right.
And so for us, that's more real than actually what you see with your eyes sometimes. And so I just sort of paid it to respect and moved on anyways from it.
Well, let's do this. We need to take a break. When we come back, what is your take on things like the demonic realm, on UFOs, aliens, Bigfoot, cryptids, stone giants, and more? We'll cover that when we return with our guest, Dave Shonogo, again, the director of the Seneca-Iroquois National Museum. Senecamuseum.org is the website. We'll include that on today's podcast so that you can find it easily. Right, we'll be back with more Dave Shonogo and more of these insights on the supernatural realm and Native American culture when we return right here on Beyond the Darkness.
Beyond the Darkness.
We're back. This is the best in paranormal talk radio. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Tim Dennis still in the hospital. Just continue sending your love, patience, understanding, and goodwill towards him. He is still editing from the bed. So today's episode, this one that you're hearing right now, after I've recorded it, I've sent it to him. He's the one tipping and tailing it and clipping it and posting it up for you, so it will be available. So he is still part of the show, still following you guys and what you're doing on social media and making sure that the show is going off without a hitch. So thank you, Tim, for the hard work you're doing, and we hope you all heal really quickly. Our guest today, Dave Shonogo, he is the director of the Seneca-Iroquois National Museum. Senecamuseum.org is the website. We've been talking to him about some of the belief systems from his culture and how they align with the supernatural. Now, we talked about kind of the malevolent spirits, some of the darker things. Is there a belief system in the demon realm as far as your people go?
Well, there was a creator and his brother, and he's, the evil one, basically. So he's created the monsters. He's created different things that are negative in the world. So, yeah.
Now, is there a real belief in this, or are these meant as parables, as things to teach you? And, many people believe our Christian Bible is more of a book of ethics, or at what they believed at the time were ethics, and parables to scare you so that you would lead a good life. Do you believe that plays a part in, or is there a real belief system that these beings, these creatures have existed, this creator and his dark brother?
We believe that's who they are. They're twins, and like I said, one was more positive and negative, and it was just the one brother, he was jealous about the things, and he has his time. The creator's time is more like in the morning and during the daylight, and then when it starts to get evening and dark is more his brother's time. So when people see things at night and stuff, it was, during his brother's time at night, when he has more authority over the world than his brother does anyway. So, but yeah, we believe in that it really happened that way, and that, there are these entities, these monsters. Some of the things that we're looking at with the new cultural center is talking about some of these what people would consider myths, and showing them that they probably really are not myths, but actually some kind of oral history that's been passed on from one generation to the next generation. For example, like in David Cusick's book that he wrote in the 1800s about our history, there was a huge guisquis, and nowadays we call guisquis as a pig. But in this story, the huge guisquis knocked over the palisade and rummaged through the village and caused all this chaos. And so David Cusick theorized that it was a mammoth. And I thought about that for a while too, that when the French and the Germans, when they brought the hog over, it wasn't the domestic pig like we see, but a hog. What does a hog have but a tusk, a snout? It looks a lot like a mammoth. And I just think it's interesting that we have that word even to this day or whatever, that we're just calling it a pig. And some of the words that we use are similar like that. Like, for example, we have a word in our language, it's Seneca-Iroquois, which is a blue dinosaur. And I always thought that was interesting. Like, if we weren't around when dinosaurs were around, then how do we have it in our language that it was a blue dinosaur? And now with archaeology and Jurassic Park being around, we realize now that some of these raptors, dinosaurs, were blue. And what else we have? We have a word, it's called genostes, which we call a mosquito. But it translates out into like a long beak. And when I think of a mosquito, I think of it as a long beak. And so I remember reading Chief Corn Planter version of the giant mosquito, and he describes it as having a long beak, and it has teeth in it, and the wingspan was 3 men's long, and I'm about 6'2", so I figured I was the average size, so that would make it about 18 feet long, the wingspan, and the feet were like arrowheads, and it had a tail, what they describe it as like a stinger that used to, the animal used to like to poke it into people and get their blood and stuff. But if you look at it as like a pterosaurus, one of those kind of birds, it sounds more like that's what they were describing actually. And nowadays we just describe it as a mosquito. So to me, that's all fascinating. And in the 1800s, when they were recording these stories, they were like, oh, well, that couldn't have been that way, But as time has gone on, archaeologists have found, we have Nugwetgowa. There's this huge naked bear that was bigger than all the other bears, and that used to eat bears. Well, through anthropology, archaeology, they found that there was this huge bear that was about 18 feet tall and makes the grizzly bear look like a little bear anyway. So, and it was during probably the Ice Age that bear was around. But we have stories about that bear, attacking people in the village, and how people used to have to overcome it. And it's interesting in the stories that they try to hit the bear in the body with the arrows, and it just bounced off. And in the end, they had to hit the bear in the paw in order to kill it. And that was the only vulnerable place it was. So, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say you've got an interesting culture, interesting stories that are shared. When you look at this and things like the Thunderbird or the Stone Giants, now are the Stone Giants more resembling things like current day Bigfoot or Sasquatch, or are they a different being unto themselves?
I would think they were more like the Sasquatch that people hear, because in our language, what we really call them are stone coats. And that what happened is that in one version, they were out in the Midwest somewhere, and like a meteor fell and changed them, and changed their height and their skin and stuff. And another version, they were just always tall. But in most of our versions about the stone giants that you look back at, they had like a stickiness to their skin, or they used tar from like a pine tree, and they would roll themselves in sand. So not necessarily that they were made of stone, but they would roll themselves in the sand, and then the sand would get hard. Because we have some stories where they took off their coat and put it off to the side, and then come into the person's house. And so not necessarily that they were all stone anyways. There was a living being underneath there anyway. So when I was young, that's what I used to think, was that when they talked about the stone giants, they were all just stone people. But the more I grew up and the more I heard about the stories, I realized that there were beings that had stone on them anyway. So,
do you believe that there are creatures like this that still roam today, or are these beasts that have gone extinct?
No, we still think that they're probably around somewhere, and maybe they're go in between this dimension and another dimension, and it's just sort of like let them live in peace, basically. Don't go and look for them or whatever. They're just trying to dwell, live their lives like everybody else is, and so.
Are there fears between any of the tribes with any of these creatures? I know that in some groups that we've spoken to, they have said that the Bigfoot are nothing more than just another tribe, but they are cannibalistic, that they're large, they're what they consider to be dangerous, so they just avoid that clan, that tribe. What's your take on that?
That's what I believe too, and that they're just become in contact with them, and you get on their bad side, basically, that they would attack you, eat you, hurt you really badly. I mean, they're a huge being anyway, so that's why we just sort of try to leave them alone. Just like where I live now, we've always had stories about a huge snake in the reservoir in Chautauqua Lake, and it seems like throughout our history there's always been this big snake that's always been by us, that's a giant snake. And you hear people talk about, like they're in the reservoir and the snake bumped into their boat and moved their boat, or somebody had seen it, sort of like the Loch Ness Monster kind of thing.
Okay.
And that's how huge that snake is anyway. So, and then, if that happens, people burn tobacco and, try to say their words, and the people that know what to do on that to keep that thing away from us anyway. So
these beings too, when you look at the culture, I know a lot of the groups will talk about animal totems. Are these creatures, these more mythological monsters, ever looked at as totems, or are they more revered as deities or godlike?
I don't know if they're godlike or whatever. They were just sort of another entity or whatever. Like I said, when we had our creation story, there were beings that were around back then, and so some of the beings like this, the thunder beings, we call them our grandparents, our grandfathers, because they're beings that are older than we are. They just promised the Creator that they would help us. They could have been mean to us and been evil, whatever, but in the end, they decided not to have that kind of relationship with us. So, some of the big snakes and all them, those were things that the Creator's brother had created and made in the world, and ultimately, he doesn't like mankind. He doesn't think that we should be in existence. So, he was trying to do everything he could to wipe us out.
Okay, but there was no other reason other than, which almost sounds like the Christianity side of things, right? That God has had to kind of shake up the earth a few times, after mistakes, whether it's through fire or flood. That it was these moments, it was the Creator trying to reinvent or remove the corruption that had taken place here.
I don't know. I know there were certain things that happened. We have like a story about it was a bad time, and the Creator comes back and helps people and puts them in a cave, and then they stay there for a long time. From what I gather from the story, it sounds like it's almost like the Ice Age, and when the world was renewed, then he brought them back out, and then he placed us where we were meant to be and stuff. So where my ancestors were in the Genesee and all that, it was because that's where the Creator had put us to be. And at that time we had a different name, Dahon. We possessed the door and stuff like that instead of Anundawaka. And so, I guess we do have some stories like that where the world has changed through fire, through water. A lot of times the reason we're known as Anundawaka is at one point there was a flood, and over by Victor, New York, Canandaigua, there's a big mountain, a big hill that we were supposed to have been on, and 6 families survived the flood. And once the waters went down, and that was the first time anybody, I think, had seen a snake, and this little boy was going to kill it, but then he decided not to, and he feeds it, and then it grows into this huge 2-headed snake, and starts eating animals and people, and eventually the boy, his name was Hajino, has a dream, and he's supposed to use a lock of his sister's hair for his bow and a special arrow and stuff, and then kills the snake and saves the people. But still to this day, that hill is over there in Canandaigua, and they call it Bear Hill, and where the snake went down, there's still nothing that grows there to this day. And so I was pointed that out one time. I went there with somebody because they had found these heads, sort of these stones that looked like heads that were under the water and stuff. So they asked me what they should do with them, and I told them, well, leave them there. There was probably a reason that they were there. But in the story, when the boy had cut open the snake, the people that he eaten, their heads turned into stones and fell down by the water. So I thought that was pretty eerie when they were finding these stones that look like heads nowadays underneath the water. So, and it looked like they said it was along the water line anyway, so where the island would have been originally anyway. So.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Then you find something that almost corroborates it in a very mythical way.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, let's Talk to me, if you don't mind. Skinwalkers is something that's intrigued people. The idea of shapeshifters, lycanthropes, skinwalkers. What is the true definition or understanding of your people of what a skinwalker is?
Well, we have like the vampire skeleton is what we call them. And there were entities that they sort of died and then they came back and then they wanted to eat people and try to harm people. So even nowadays, like when we have those 10 days, we'll all keep watchers, and it's 2 men that stay up all night, and everyone always stays with the body to make sure that nothing happens. But it sounds to me like originally that those vampire skeletons, that's what they were. There were entities or people that had died and come back and tried to eat people. Almost like, I guess, Dracula and all that kind of. But
is there a belief that Native Americans can shift into animals? Or is that, again, more of walking in the spirit realm?
Yeah. Some people believe that people can shapeshift and that it just different energies, different vibrations, and if we can tune your body into that and all that, then you can shapeshift. So we have what's here is called Gahai. It's a hill, and Gahai is what we call like a witch, so it's Gahani. And so you hear stories about, some old lady that changed into a deer or changed into different animals, a big dog or something like that, and they were known as shapeshifters. So a lot of times people stay away from that area, especially to go hunting. A lot of guys won't go there to hunt deer. You don't want to hunt a deer and find out it was a shapeshifter anyway. So I've heard that in the past where somebody's like shot a deer and then they go there and the person or the deer ends up being some lady that's wounded or something. So,
well, you think they would be smarter than going taking up the guise of an animal during hunting time, right? That would be counterproductive for any belief system at all. But you don't you don't believe there's any real grounds to that?
No, I think that people that know what they're doing did shapeshift. So I think it's a reality that not everybody can do or whatever, or anybody would want to do anyways. But
are there certain practices like that your people still hold very dear, and they don't want information being given out regarding those abilities?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say that was the thing, because it was never looked down as a good thing, shape-shifting. So.
Oh, really? I would have thought that would have been a sign of virility and strength that you had the ability to do these things, but that usually meant you were in league with something a little more dark then, is what you're getting at.
Yeah, it could be, I think it's with any power, it can overcome people,
Right.
Yes, I know, over my lifetime, I've gone to places and it'll be raining and somebody will see me and be like, well, you guys did the rain dance. I'm like, well, if I had that much juice or whatever, we wouldn't have lost the war,
Right.
We wouldn't be having this conversation.
I like that. We wouldn't have lost the war. That's definitely an interesting aspect of the story to share. All right.
Yeah.
What about the little people? Now, there's tales of that through many different cultures, many different lands of these little people. And, a lot of people think that we're talking about Disney-sized pixies and fairies, but that's not what you're referring to, correct?
Well, some of them are. They say some of them, some little people are really tiny, some are a little bigger. As far as I know, there are 3 different types, and one size looks like a size of a little kid. Like I heard when I was growing up, some of the guys went out to Ohio one time and they were singing one of our social songs, and as they were singing the songs, these little people came out and started dancing with them. And the non-natives that were there were like, "Oh, where did these little Indian kids come from?" And the guys got freaked out and just kept singing the song. And then once the song was done, then those little people went back to where they were, and they decided that they wouldn't sing that song there anymore. So,
well, why? Yeah. If it made them happy and brought them out to dance and frolic, wouldn't that be a good thing?
Well, little people are tricksters, so they sort of play tricks on people. So you don't want to encourage them too much to do something to you. So they can help you, but then at the same time, like I said, they can play tricks on you because of their powers and stuff. So so that's sort of why they didn't want to deal with that, because they're not from that community anymore, too. So, all
right,
they didn't want anybody to get hurt or whatever when they left, and not know how to deal with that aspect of our reality. So, that makes sense to you?
Sure, I understand that. And in talking to these beings, is this something that Native American cultures would call upon different beings to help with crops, with weather, with things like this, or was that frowned upon as well, almost like our looking at calling upon demons to help?
I don't know. We called upon. I mean, like when we do our ceremonies and stuff, those are for the Creator. So, like my daughter, she goes to a private Catholic school. Even though she's not Catholic. And so one day she came home and she was like, Hotney. Hotney is father in our language. And she's like, how come you didn't bless the food? And I was like, because when the Creator blessed it the first time, it was still good. I was like, I didn't. And then I talked to her more about it, and then I was like, oh. So when me and my wife and her talked about it, we said, well, we do sort of bless the food. Like we have planting ceremony, and we sing songs, and we dance certain dances for that. And then when there's green corn, there's different dances, and when there's harvest, there's different dances. Mostly when we eat, we don't really think. All we do is thank the food, and just to make sure that we're always appreciative that we have food, because someday it might be that we have a starvation. Then we're
so
really
it's living in a attitude of gratitude. Then
yes, and our whole culture is about that. Like when we do the Thanksgiving address, some people call it a prayer. But a lot of us are like, I don't know if it's a prayer, because you don't ask for anything. You're thanking everything in nature for doing what it's supposed to be doing. So
for being bountiful and giving to you the food that you're eating.
Right. So like you give thanks to the wind, right? That without accident, without wind, we're gonna die. If the trees aren't there, we're gonna die. If the animals aren't there, we're going to die. We depend on all these things. And from our beliefs and like our creation story, the animals, a lot of them came from the spiritual world too, and then they go to the spiritual world after us. And so not only do human beings go there, but the other entities go there too. So that's why we call them cousins.
Now, do you consider, if people see little people, if they see the Thunderbird or the Phoenix or any of these beings, is it considered good luck or is it considered bad luck to have crossed these creatures' paths?
I would say, and the way you guys probably believe, it would probably be bad luck or whatever, like, because you would have to do something. You would have to do ceremonies and stuff. Like one time I used to work for a tribal historic preservation office, and these people, they felt bad because they had taken some of my ancestors and the bones because they were on an archaeology site. So they thought they'd be helpful and like send them back to us. And I didn't realize that when I opened up the vanilla envelope and was reading the letter, that they actually had sent the bones with them. And so then I had to, because they were came in contact with them, then I had to do like a ceremony to cleanse myself from that anyway. So I don't think they meant to disturb my life in such a manner of that or whatever. They just felt bad at what they had done anyways and was trying to redeem themselves for it. But in doing that anyways, it would have been nice to know ahead of time that they were going to send these these bones so that I would be prepared, you know what I mean? And that's where some of it is with some of the things, some people feel bad about something and then they send it to us and then they don't realize that how much it's going to disturb our life, or what we have to do, so but I dealt with it and, took care of what I needed to take care of and moved on from there. So
what can you tell us for listeners out there that are trying to deal with entities that they think may be Native American in nature or in origin? Is there specific things that they can do, or is it best to try to contact the local tribes leaders from that area to have somebody come out to work on that?
I don't know. Spirits always know the difference, but we're all human beings, and so if somebody has connections to the spiritual world, and then that's where they should go to. Like I go to people that I think know how to do that kind of stuff, and somebody else has a priest or whatever that they're into, and they believe that they can go into that person to talk to that spirit, then they probably should try to do that anyways, the best they can. So,
all right. Well, I'm so fascinated by the stories you have to share with us, and the legends, the tales, and the belief systems. And I know our listeners love learning about this as well along with us. What can you tell us regarding the superstitious side? Is there a superstitious side of Native American tribes, or is that something that's looked at as just silly worry and concern?
No, I mean, there's some things that we have that, we don't, like Niagara Falls, there's the Devil's Hole, and we believe there was a huge snake that used to live there, and it has negative energy. So if you go there, and you're more likely to get bad luck. And so people just sort of that know about it just avoid that space. And so, yeah, we have certain things that we try to avoid to make sure we don't have bad luck, I guess is the best way to say it in English anyway. So, I think we're like everybody else, we want to have a nice, good, helpful, healthy life, we don't want anything bad to happen to us or, our families and stuff like that. So, but that's one of the places, Devil's Hole anyways, by Niagara Falls, that I know, because I had some friends that wanted to go there, and I told them not to go there, and then they went there anyways, and then they had some bad luck, so they had some people take care of it to do some burning and some stuff for them.
To help clear that, right?
Yeah, I just looked at them and I was like, I told you not to go there, but hey, you're a grown man. If you want to go there, then that's your business. But now somebody else had to tend to you anyways. Now next time I was hoping that they would listen and just avoid the area. So.
And what about ley lines, things like power points? Are there really places of the earth that are more powerful for supernatural force?
I don't know if we would look at it as power lines or whatever, but then again, like one of the elders was talking about the way we do the Kedonyo, because it starts at the ground and we go all the way up into the sky world to the Creator himself. By the time she was done explaining it, she said it was sort of like opening up the chakras and cleaning out our aura, and so yeah, we believe that there's probably some places that are better, have more positive energy than other places.
And as we wrap up, I guess the other aspect that I'm intrigued by is cultures that have come before us or since that might be alien in nature. Is there any belief system involved with your people that has taken place, that there are people from the stars that have visited here or continue to visit here?
I guess, like the little people, I guess, would be considered like aliens, because in some of our stories you hear about the little boy or girl that got taken by them, and they go back to their village and the sky is like a reddish color, and they might stay there for 3 days, and then they come back and all their friends and all their relatives are like 50 years older, but in their place that they were at, they were only gone for 3 days. So some of it, I guess, that would be alien in itself, but it just sounds like some of these entities are just in a different dimension.
So you don't believe necessarily that we're being visited from planets or other species, but it's something maybe that's just right here, very close to us.
Yeah, well, we have the sky beings that help protect us, and they come from the sky worlds. I mean, so they come from I guess they would be considered aliens. We don't classify them like that, but they're not from here. Because that's one of the things, like when I was talking about a twice had the soul, one of the things that makes us a human being is because of the spirit of this planet. And so I remember reading the novel, graphic novel, Red Mars, and where corporations pollute this planet, and so some natives go and live on Mars, and they are starting to get overtaken by the corporations there anyways. And so we were having a discussion one time with other guys, like, well, would they be a human being? Would they be Ungwe? And we said, no, they probably wouldn't be, because they would have the spirit of that planet and not the spirit of this planet, the children that were born from there and stuff. So part of what makes us human beings is this planet. Our connection to this planet.
I appreciate you doing the work you do and keeping this alive, because I think this is important, that we don't just forget some of these cultures. And I know in a lot of places in the United States we want to sweep things, and especially things that we feel that we're ashamed of, under the carpet for atrocities that we've put on people. And I'm glad that there are people like you out there continuing this proud tradition, keeping the words, the faith, the belief, and the stories alive, the languages alive. So thank you so much for what you do, Dave, and thank you for being a part of our show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. And again, we'll put up links to the website, but it's Senecamuseum.org. Take some time out, folks. When you do these travels, take some time out, visit these museums, visit our heritage centers, and learn. Bring your kids in there. And at first, they may think there's nothing to it, but when you start to get in and understand the real culture behind this, it's not John Wayne movies, it's not the Lone Ranger movies, it's reality, and finding out about an amazing part of our history, our country's history, the people that lived here, moved around us, and are still among us with much more wisdom than we're giving credit for, and we should be learning from. So please take that time to learn and check out places like the Seneca Museum, and check out the website Senecamuseum.org. We will be back next week, hopefully, with a full staff and Tim back on his feet, feeling well. I will update you Monday as to what's going on with his health, and hopefully he'll be here joining me at my side on the best in paranormal talk radio. This has been Beyond the Darkness.